look myself in the mirror and accept that if you weren't a racist, you condone what a racist did. So that's, to me, the same thing. It's the same thing. So
I agree with you completely.
Sounds to really make you rub and scrub. Swing badang badang bong biddly biddly bong. Bong biddly 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 bong. I said, pass the dutchie on the left hand side. Pass the dutchie on the left hand side. It a go bun.
Anthony, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I appreciate it.
You got a big show. You got a big following. So God bless you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Both of you, welcome to the show. I greatly appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, and good morning.
The floor is yours.
Whatever it is, it'll keep till the morning. Haven't we both got better things to do? Midnight blue.
I'm on your side, I still care. I may have died, but I've gone nowhere. Just think of me, I'll be there. Just think of me, I'll be there. There you go. Bit rusty.
Oh. You know what? I gotta tell you, usually I make my guests get a little emotional if I find something that touches them. You got me this time. So viewers, you're always telling me you got this one emotional. That got me emotional. I had to wipe my eyes.
No.
Since you told me you've seen some of the shows already, welcome, Johnny, of course. You know the running joke on my show is, because you're 6 hours ahead of me,
Oh, yeah.
I need the lottery numbers.
What do
But
you mean? These ones?
there you go. I love it.
I'm
There
one
you
step
go.
ahead of you, man.
Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing. Forget about it. Bad Brad Berkwitt, and you're watching the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Now make sure you hit that button in whatever corner it's in and subscribe. Leave your comments below. We picked up a lot of subscribers lately, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of you as well. Follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, that's at BadBradRSR. Well, today, folks, my returning guest sounds like Jeopardy, right? Forget about it. This is his third time on my show. I consider him my paisan. This guy is a man of his word. He's probably one of the most intelligent cats, most well-read, knowledgeable on so many different things. Diversity, which is my favorite word in the dictionary. He has it in his DNA, diversity. He's a New Yorker. He's an Italian, and he pulls no punches, and he's hilarious. And again, I consider him my paisan. I have a lot of respect for this gentleman. I really do. So I want to welcome to the show, returning for the third time, the one, the only, the mooch, Anthony Scaramucci. Forget about it. All right, folks, the man is back. Before we start, and I welcome him. Last time he was on was post-election, was November 17th. I looked it up on the thing. I was like, man, it's almost been, 6 months goes by like that time.
Crazy.
It's crazy. How you doing, Anthony?
Well, I mean, 6 months have gone by, but there's been a lot of good things in the last 6 months. I think. I think you would agree with me. You know, we've got several 100 million vaccines have been deployed. I think you've been sensational, frankly, on your promotion of the vaccine and sort of the eradication of this false nonsense related to the vaccine. The anti-vaxxer community has no grounding. There's no scientific fact to what they're saying. And everything is safer and everything's better once you're vaccinated. So you've got hundreds of millions of vaccines have been deployed. The economy is finally picking up. There's been a opening. The CDC guidelines are improving. Hopefully we'll get greater and greater economic growth as a result of all that, Brad. So I'm super excited about that. The former president, him being off Twitter, I think it's helped the country, frankly.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but my blood pressure is probably down. My heart rate's probably down. I would say that's probably true for tens of millions of people. We learned today that his popularity is dwindling in the Republican Party. Even they recognize that he's not the solution for them if they want to have their policies in vogue. And in the meantime, slow and steady, Joe Biden is out there just chipping away at different things to make the country safer, to make the country economically fairer. And we'll have to see what happens. I mean, I guess my only issue is we just have to be very careful with the taxation, because I'm all about paying the taxes. You and I have had this conversation. I think we have similar backgrounds. My grandfather always had the best line: if you can't afford the price of the ticket, don't go to the movies. That was a big Italian expression as us growing up as kids. And so I pay all my taxes. I'm a New York resident. I'm happy to pay all my state, local, and federal taxes. But I think you have to be very careful, because taxes are a price for services. And so that's how a lot of people look at them. So I'm willing to accept the taxes, but I want the potholes. I want the street cleaned. I want my family safe from crime.
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay you all of this money, but I sort of got to get something in exchange. And when you get that imbalance, you start to see population loss. As an example, when Mike Bloomberg was running New York City, the city was humming. You saw population growth. And then you have to say to yourself, okay, the city was doing great in 2013. We've added $30 billion to the budget. So just to put that in percentage terms, Bill de Blasio has increased the budget by 42% over the 8 years that he's been mayor. Yet I would say that the quality of life in the city has diminished for everybody. So, prices, taxes are a price for services. And so people can be mad at me for saying that. Hey, you're a rich guy, pay your fair share. I'm all about doing that. I have no problem with it. But you will see migration and you will see mobility where people feel that in other parts of the country, they're getting a better service for the price that they're paying in terms of taxes. So we'll have to see how that shapes out.
Let me ask you this, Anthony, because I'll take up for you all the time. Yeah, not all the time, but with people that say, "Oh, he's not fair." No, you're like one of the most straightforward, fair guys. You see things from all different sides. I try to be like that too. I get on people on the left. I say, "Come on," with like you were talking about anti-vaxxers. We got them on the left too. We got them on the resistors. We're in agreement there. Freedom of speech, something I defended for 20 years and 28 days in the military. Freedom of speech goes a long way. And you can get in trouble with a lot of things that you say, and you can get covered by freedom of speech. Where I want to ask you this talking point is, when does Fox News when do they get fined by the FCC, if they are under the FCC, which I would believe they were? I know they defend themselves, and their defense was, you can't believe anything we say. But here's the problem with that. When you have people, and I saw you call them out on your Twitter feed, I seen you call them on shows, Tucker Carlson talking about going somebody's face with a mask and kids and do that. That's above and beyond. That's not even National Enquirer bullshit, Anthony. That's like, it's almost like being it's not almost being like, they're traitors. They keep perpetuating the lie that the election was stolen. When does it become the point where, Howard Stern, someone we both know, he got fined out the ass for things he did, and he was a shock jock, so you expected it from him. They go under the banner that they're news until they get sued, and then they say we're not news, and you can't really trust us. When is enough to either shut them down or hold these people like Carlson, especially Tucker Carlson lately, accountable for the millions of people that do follow him and believe this bullshit, but also causing kumas, as Debbie says from Louisiana, with people getting into it and a lot of other things?
Well, listen, great question. Let me give you the bad news first, but it's good news for the country because you talked about your 20 years and 28 days. The bad news is they have heavy protections under the First Amendment, heavy protections. And so that's the bad news as it relates to them and their disinformation. That's the good news for the country. That freedom of speech is an integral part of our freedoms. I have argued, this got me in trouble with the former president, because I argued that the free speech is not only good in terms of holding people in power accountable, Brad, but it's good in terms of our economic innovation. Because if I tell my second grader, you speak and think freely, he goes on and creates Facebook or Google or Apple. If you're in a communist nation or you're in China, they censor the internet, 2/3 of the internet censored. You can't talk about the political leadership there badly. You'll get put in a retraining camp. Their people can't innovate the way we're innovating. Now they're doing better now. They picked up more in AI, but a lot of that stuff has been intellectual property theft from the United States and places in the West. So for me, what I would say about Fox News, there's only one way to defeat Fox News, and it's misinformation, and that's wham, right in the wallet.
Yeah.
And what people have to understand is the advertisers have left. There's no rational advertisers left on Tucker Carlson. He's got catheters being sold, My Pillows being sold. Maybe someone needs a high alert, whatever they call those things. If they fall down, help, I've fallen and I can't get up.
Right.
But there's no real main material sponsors there anymore on the primetime punditry. But they're making a tremendous amount of money on carriage fees. So let me just explain that quickly to your listeners and viewers. So there's probably 90 cents of carriage fees for CNN, but that would include headline news and CNN International. Okay, so in other words, every sub that comes into the cable network, CNN gets 90 cents for them. They then have to go out and make their money on the advertising. And if you see CNN as a whole waterfront of institutional and corporate advertising. But Fox is different. They did a wonderful job of negotiating about $2+ of carriage fees for the one channel. Now, why were they able to do that? Well, it was the ratings. Their ratings are very, very powerful. And in certain parts of the country, there are times where people are signing up for cable, not cutting their cable cord, for Fox News. So if you can get, and this is where, corporate activism is coming into play, 90 or so CEOs said, hey, sorry, if you're going to be an insurrectionist and a traitor and forms acts of sedition against the American government, we're not going to give you money anymore as a political party. And everybody's up in arms about that. Or the Major League Baseball, where Manfred had two choices, Brad. He had choice number one, he could move the All-Star game, or choice number two, he could move the All-Star game. He had no other choice because the players went to him and said, we probably will walk on the season. We're definitely walking on the All-Star game. We're not going to the All-Star game. So, but we'll probably walk on the season too. So if you want to have a season, move the All-Star game. And so they want to blame it on Manfred, but it's actually the players.
Right.
These are descendants of Jackie Robinson. They've had enough of this racist nonsense, right? So with Fox News, a couple of these big cable providers say, hey, you know what? On this next carriage charge negotiation, we're going to 5 cents. I'm sorry. And hasta la vista Fox, they'll have to reorganize and restructure Fox. Until they do that, Fox is going to be out there with all of this nonsense. They're talking about hamburgers. They made up a fake story about Vice President Kamala Harris, about her books were brought to the border. One book was brought to one charitable organization. They took a picture of it. They made it like there was 400,000 books sent. This is complete nonsense and garbage, and it's perpetuating this distrust in the media. People don't even know what to do anymore, where to go to get straight up information.
Right. And you mentioned CNN, and I know you're good friends with Chris Cuomo. I watch Chris daily. I watch Chris and Don. And I mean, Chris tries to, call it as straight as he can. I mean, I've watched him get emotional in a lot of his openings when he does his opening thing because of the misinformation, the anti-vax, all of this stuff that just goes against, I don't care what party, it just goes against humanity. That's what fucking makes me so mad with this nonsense, because there's so many people that follow him. Tying into that, Anthony, as well, the Republican Party. I know you had a line, not a line in a bad way, but your thing that you pushed out is, hey, Brad, and you said it on almost every show, you said 74, especially when they come after you, 74.2 million or thereabout people voted for the former guy. We got to give them an off-ramp. Well, we're 5 months now, 100 days into President Biden's thing, and I can tell you, living in Northwest Indiana, I've never seen anything like it in my life, okay? You got people in their yards that got shrines to the former guy. I mean, along with the Confederate flag, but I mean, just, and, you know, F Biden, which, I mean, you got kids, little kids playing in the yard, and they got all of this stuff. At this point, when are those 74.2 million, or are you seeing a lot of them? And I'm not talking about the Lincoln Project guys and a lot of guys that you associate with. I'm talking about those other ones that were diehard former guys that I see out here. If they're not coming off that ramp that we wanted to extend to them, then what?
Well, I think it's a huge problem. So, I mean, I'm working with the Center Right Alliance. We're about to put out a statement. This is former Republicans, or I would like to say Republicans in exile. I actually think the rhinos, Republicans in name only, are the Trumpists, the ones that are acting in a radical way, who foment insurrection and sedition to the United States, disavow the Constitution. I think they're the rhinos. I don't think we're the rhinos. We're actually the old school Republicans. And so I think there's a very large group of people that want to break away from that party and liquidate that party as it currently is configured. So you're right. I'm sure there are shrines out there in Northwest Indiana and other parts of the country, lots of the red states. There's a level of racism in the country where he's opened that can of worms. We could take Don Lemon's point of view in his book, This is the Fire, best-selling book. What Don is saying in the book is thank God for Donald Trump, because he gave license to the racists, and he gave them the opportunity to totally expose and express themselves. And so now at least we know what's lurking in the society, and perhaps that will lead to greater healing. You know, if we're all passive aggressive with each other and we pretend that there's no racism, and the racism gets worse and worse and perpetuates, maybe this is sort of a, you know, climax, if you will, where we can get down to brass tacks and see if we can resolve it. But the country, you know, I don't like calling the country a racist country. I'm not going to say everybody in the country is racist, things like that. We got a lot of good people in the country. But if the facts are the facts, you've got, you know, 15 to 18% of the country that's African American or minority that has been just subjugated in the country. They were told that they couldn't drink at certain water fountains. They were told they couldn't go into certain bathrooms. They had to sit in the back of the bus. They couldn't get to the lunch counter. You know, Republicans are like, well, we have ID for buying booze. Why don't we have voter ID? Right. Well, we don't have voter ID because they were killing, lynching, and setting black people on fire. So they would come to the voting station with their ID, and then the KKK would find them and lynch them and kill their family members. So that's why we don't have voter ID. When somebody says like Tom Cotton, I would have loved to have debated him on CNBC, because he's talking about this whataboutism and nonsense. Well, there's less of this and less of that in New York. Well, they weren't setting black people on fire in New York 150 years ago or 100 years ago like they were in Georgia. And so all of this whataboutism, to me, is a bunch of nonsense. And, you know, can I tell you what Tom Cotton's middle name is?
Go ahead.
Okay. Tom Cotton's middle name is Shut Up, and Why Don't You Go Back to Picking the Cotton. Okay. So it's Tom, shut up, and you go back to picking the cotton.
Exactly.
See what I'm saying? And he's a full-on racist. Yeah. He's a very, very smart guy. Thank God he looks like Ichabod Crane, okay, because, you know, he's got that Steve Bannon ugliness about him.
Oh, God.
And so, I mean, so, you know,
contemporary.
Certain people are so ugly on the inside that they look ridiculously ugly on the outside. And I think that will prevent guys like Cotton and Bannon from rising to power. Grandpa Munster, you know, Ted Cruz. He can't get there. Josh Hawley is obviously a seditionist, a criminal. You know, he's a horrific guy, like a neo-fascist. But here's the problem, and you know this because of where you live. When Lindsey Graham, when Lady Lindsey is saying plus, Trump plus, what is he saying? That's code for let's get more crackers out there to vote, because we only lost this last election by 43,000. And we don't need to win the popular vote anymore. Let the coast cede to the blue states, and let's go after this in the red states. And oh, by the way, since we changed the state and local income tax deduction, the red states are getting more members of the House of Representatives. So we'll likely win back the House, and we can take back the presidency through the Electoral College. Let's just dig up and go deeper into this knuckle-dragging nationalism, this knuckle-dragging nativist base of ours. Rather than opening the tent and expanding the tent and opening the tent to color minorities, coming up with fresh ideas.
LGBTQ.
Making the system fairer, making the system broader, standing for common sense values, standing for common sense economic policies. No, let's go full throttle with the nativism and as Lindsey Graham calls it, Trump plus, to see if we can dig out. And so this is, to me, the last vestiges of old white power, frankly. This is the last vestiges of a group of people. When Tucker Carlson's talking about white replacement or displacement theory, whatever the hell the name of it is, what he's basically saying is whites are better than blacks at running things. And so since there are more blacks and brown people today that may vote whites out of power, we need to change the system so whites can stay in power. Okay, so what are you saying, Tucker? You don't want democracy anymore? No, I don't want democracy anymore because black and brown people are going to vote the white people out. And so I don't want that. That's not good for the country. And that is the biggest bunch of malarkey of anything that I've ever heard in my life, okay? There are, as you know, and as I know, there are smart, capable people of all sizes, shapes, colors, and sexual orientation. What we know sociologically, we've proven this, that the more diversity that we have, the more openness and creativity that we have, and the more powerful we are. And so this is why corporate America actually is leading the way, Brad, because these guys made a decision years ago that their boards of directors were going to look more like America. So there would be, it wouldn't just be white, stodgy madmen from the 1960s on these public boards. There would be an eclectic mix of people, and there'd be more black and brown people on these boards. And now these boards look more like America. So when you're passing these ludicrous, racist, restrictive voting measures, those boards look around and say, hey, that's not cool. And so they denounce it. Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, places like that say, hey, I'm sorry, Major League Baseball. And so the weird thing about this is it'll likely be the private sector that leads us out of this disastrous situation that we're in right now.
Okay. In our lifetime, Anthony, you think we're going to see them get rid of the Electoral College and just go popular vote for the president?
So I don't see that happening. I think it'll be very tough to do from a constitutional theory point of view. If you had said to me 5 years ago, I would have said to you, Brad, I don't want that to happen. That's better for Indiana. It's better for states that are less populated to have the Electoral College in there. It's a check against mob rule. It's a check against what the founders wanted. Remember what the founders wanted was they wanted representation. That was the House of Representatives. But they knew that that was always going to be a hotbed. The thermometer was going to get hot in that area, in that chamber. And then they wanted the Senate with 6-year terms versus 2-year terms to be a little bit of a cooling station where things could be calmer and cooler. Oh, but by the way, we want to give each of these states equal rights in the Senate. So if you're Rhode Island, you're getting 2 senators. And if you're the state of California, the most populous state, you're getting 2 senators. And so what that did was if you read Hay, if you read Hamilton in the Federalist Papers, what they were worried about, and the reason why they set it up as a republic, is they were worried about mob rule. They were worried about the popular vote winning the day and then doing extreme things to people that were in the minority. And I'm not talking about minorities. I'm talking about people that are just, voting against what the popular people have. And so what the founders said, if you don't have that check in the system, you'll have exigencies and excesses that will be hurtful and will lead to the demise of the system. And they were right. 244 years later, the system is still working. But what the Republicans did, and I will say this is brilliant on their part, and Stu Stevens, which I'd love to get him on your show, he wrote a book, This Is All a Lie. He's a Republican strategist.
Oh, I know he is.
He was basically explaining what the Republicans did when Johnson passed the civil rights legislation. He turned to his buddies and said, well, that's it. We've lost the South now, at least for 1 or 2 generations. And it's 2 generations now and counting.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Republicans said, okay, this is great. We're gonna hold the South. And then they did something about 10 years ago called Operation Red Map. I don't know if you heard of that.
No, that I don't know.
But the Koch family, others, what they basically did was they flooded the state legislatures with money to elect Republicans in the state legislature so that they can control the state legislatures, which affect gerrymandering and affect voting laws at the local level. And so let's make the voting laws in places that have high density of population of minorities, black and brown people, let's make the voting laws in their areas way more restrictive so we can scale them out of the vote and scale ourselves in. In comes people like Stacey Abrams. She got hurt hard in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Kemp beats her. It's not even clear that he beat her, but let's say that he beat her. And then she says, okay, I got it. And then she works super hard. She's amazingly well organized. And she comes back with a vengeance in 2020. And they win the state, but they also win the 2 senatorial elections after the presidential election. So that tells you a lot. And oh, by the way, you and I know this. There were black residents of Georgia waiting 18 hours to vote because they have less voting booths in their heavily densely populated areas, and the whites have more voting booths per capita. And so when these guys are arguing this shit and they're talking about it, I would love to debate them because I actually know the facts. I actually know the facts of the law.
Oh, the F word. The F word, the facts.
I know the
right.
F word too. Yeah, I use that a lot. That's the
No,
first
no,
one.
I'm talking about F as in facts. No, we both use the F word.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about that fact, that F word.
A lot. But my point to you is that, stop the whataboutism. Let's look at it clinically for exactly what it is. And oh, by the way, you think that white people are smarter than black people. So you want white people in power. And so what you want to do is you want to throw up a smoke screen as it relates to our democracy and pretend that we're operating a democracy, but you want to suppress their vote. Okay, but let me tell you something. I think people are tired of that. Mm-hmm. We're in this modern age now. And I think the good news is I think Trump in some ways has been a unifying figure because he's unified normal people against these people. I mean, I'm teamed up with AOC. Her and I don't agree on everything, but I think we do agree on the democracy. I think if her and I sat down and said, well, do we want a democracy or not? She would say yes. My Republicans friends would say, well, we want to fake that there's a democracy, but we really don't want a democracy because and Trump said it better than anybody. They caught him on a mic. He said, well, if we don't put these voting laws in place, we'll never win another election.
Right.
He effing said that. But what about changing your ideas? What about, the Republican Party standing for equal opportunity? And we don't have to have equal outcomes. Nobody wants that. I don't want that. I'm a capitalist.
Right.
What about equal opportunity? And what about standing for a platform where people get some help from the government and they get some level of equality from the government as it relates to their health care and possibly
a hand up, not a handout.
100%. So to me, I think you're right. They have these shrines, but I think smart people will hopefully pull away from them, and they can't win if it's a 70-30 election. They can't win. They can win if it's a 54-46 election because they can win in places like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I feel sad about it because I have a Republican conservatism towards business and the free enterprise system, but I don't have that parochialism related to sexual orientation or opportunity for minorities. I think
you're a Catholic, and that's even and I'm just saying that you're open to that too, because I know a lot of Catholics. Oh no.
Well, yeah. So those Catholics would say that I'm not a Catholic, that
Right.
I've lost that orthodoxy in the church. But what I would say to those Catholics is that I'm an American.
Right.
And in the American Constitution, it says it right there. There's a separation between the church and the state. And if you're going to live in this country and you're going to accept the polyglot, the multiple culture country that we live in, you can't impose your values as a Catholic or a Protestant or a Baptist or even a Muslim on the other people.
Okay.
And, we have to have that agnosticism as it relates to the secularity of our government. And yeah, but you're right. I got Catholics that are mad at me for talking like that.
Well,
They're
and I wanna
anti-gay
pick-
because there's
right.
a sentence in the Bible.
Right.
But in the meantime, you got family members that are gay. What do you want to do?
Right, and I want to ask you,
them?
right,
It's stupid.
right, and that's something else I want to ask you along those lines. I saw you do an interview. It was very interesting. He brought up Italians. I'm half. I know you full blood Italian, and I know you probably have Italians that probably may not even talk to you anymore because you said so much about the former guy.
Yeah.
But explain to me, being you're diehard New Yorker. I left when I joined the military.
Right.
We came to this country. On my Italian side, we were spit on. Italians were hung at one time too. I'm not saying that the history. I'm not minimizing what happened to African Americans.
Go back to Sacco and Vanzetti
Exactly.
in the 1920s.
Right.
Or what Theodore Roosevelt in 1904, he signed legislation that said that the Italians were to be treated as non-Caucasians
Exactly.
for immigration purposes.
Right.
So, no question.
My point to that is, what is it that Italians have forgotten in their DNA and their history, how we were treated when we came here, that they align with a guy, former guy, still to this day, and you don't have to like what De Niro said, but he has every right to say it, just like you and I have every right to say what we say. But De Niro goes from a god to a mutt and a dog and the worst actor that ever lived, which that's bullshit. But what is it that a lot of Italian people align with the former guy? I don't understand it.
Well,
With him in
because
particular,
but
not the
you
Republican
do,
side,
but
him in particular.
You do understand it. You do understand it because every minority, I'm really overgeneralizing now, I'm going to get in trouble, but I don't care at this point. There's a self-hating streak. You want to be accepted. You want to be part of the majority. And so the Italians of today, generations removed from their grandparents that had that level of persecution,
Mhm.
they want to feel like they're on the other side of the fence now. And so they don't have the empathy for the people that are striving to try to be put on the other side of the fence alongside of them. And so converted people are way more ferocious and way more passionate than the people that start out in the situation. You know that, and I know that. So
Right.
that's what's going on there.
Well, that's no different than a Herschel
Also-
Walker supporting him, Anthony.
100%.
Herschel Walker. Any person of color, and I've said this on my show many times, and I stand by it. My better half is African American. Here's the thing: you can't say you care about, to me, when with Trump. This is Trump. I'm not talking about being for Republican policy and all that. I don't care about all that. I'm fine with that. But with Trump, you can't stand with Trump and say you care about. And I've said this with the few African American people out there that support him. You can't. You're not going to tell me that Diamonds and Polyester, whatever the hell her name is, and Herschel Walker and his son and all of them care about the African American community because he doesn't care. He's proven he doesn't care about the African American community.
Well, he's situational. He's opportunistically situational.
That-
So
yes,
it makes
that
sense
is.
to, an African American woman, a grandmother, it makes sense to partner. It helps him politically. He'll do
Right.
that. If it helps him to meet with Kanye West, he'll do that.
Well, Kanye West doesn't care about black people.
Well,
He don't care about black people.
If it helps Trump to say they're very fine people on both sides, he'll
Right.
do that. If he tells people to stand back and sit back, wait for your orders from me,
Yes, the Proud
basically.
Boys, yeah.
He's those are all codes for what he is saying and what he is doing. Okay. And so I don't know. I mean, here's what I would say to you. And again, these are my opinions and people could be mad at me for saying this. We have to move past this. We have to get to a transcendental moment for the country where we have leadership in place, where the leadership is explaining to people, hey, we're very similar. I would imagine, you mentioned your wife, your spouse is African-American, or your girlfriend, your significant other.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you know? Well, intuitively her skin color doesn't make her any different from you.
Nope.
It's the content of her character, and it's her as a human being. And so that, and I know that. Yet there is xenophobia, there is tribalism, there's primordialism, where we stick to our own tribe and we castigate other tribes. I mean, I sometimes think racism is a primitive thing. We're in a modern society now, and we need to transcend that, and we need to outthink it. If it's in our gene pool, if it's embedded in our system for survival based on 50,000 years ago, we have to transcendentally improve it. And so you get that. I like to think that I get that, but there's a very large group of people that don't get it. And they tune into Tucker, and he reinforces that them that they're right and that they don't need to get it. And yes, certain people are better than others, and so a result of which you happen to be part of the people that are better than the other people. When I was at the lunch table as a kid, there was a group of people, they sat together. They felt like they were better than the other people. They sat together, and secretly everyone wanted to sit at that table. And then there was the mavericks and the rebellious people that didn't care, and they had to prove that they didn't care. Okay, but that's an ecosystem and an example of what goes on in our society. And so you're a maverick. You wouldn't be doing your show if you weren't. I'm obviously a maverick. Look what I've done. My older son says, man, you're making it rough on me. He just graduated from business school. He's like, Dad, the Republicans hate your ass. You left Trump. They hate your ass. The Democrats will never embrace you because you were with Trump. So you're making it very hard for me to network in my post-graduation. And I'm like laughing at it. I was like, well, maybe I'm getting closer to the truth. My point is, be authentic, be who you are, tell the truth. You'll have a good enough collection of friends. And oh, by the way, you'll collect the people in life that think like you do.
Okay.
But we have to break some of this. You're not going to break all of it, but you could break some of it. Let's say you move 5% of the people from that atavism and nationalism and that fear-based tribalism, and you move them to something that was a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more healing. You have a quantum leap effect in the country. And so here's my prediction, okay? We're going to get there because there's a very large group of people that have had enough of this nonsense from the Republicans. Enough of it. Now, you and I both know there's nonsense going on in the radical left, the wokeism, the political correctness, let's cancel anybody that says something that we don't like. All of that nonsense is going on the other side. So that side helps people like Trump because, if they would just shut up and relax, people like Trump would lose their voice. But because they're doing that shit, Fox News, Trump can pick out certain things and enrage their tribal team versus the other team. Okay. You see what I'm saying?
Right. No, I agree with you. I want to throw two more talking points out to you. Anything going to stick with any of these cases on the former guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that people are impatient. They're saying, well, why hasn't they brought cases against him? Well, first of all, he's only been out of office 100 days. Number two, he's the former president of the United States. Whether you like it or not, there's a higher threshold standard for him than there would be for an ordinary citizen because a very big move. If you're going to bring a case against a former president, you don't want to set precedent up where political adversaries are jailing each other like they do in some of these third world countries. The guy runs, he loses, then the new guy comes in and puts him in a jail cell in a banana republic. That's why Joe Biden is telling people, thank God he is, that he wants an independent Department of Justice. He's not leaning on them to do anything. The flip side is that, putting Trump away, you got to be careful because unless you got him dead to rights with a smoking gun, I think it could creep into it being a political activity. I may have said this to you before, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's such a valuable point. Ted Kennedy in September of 1974 was railing on Jerry Ford. So Ford, about a month after the August 9th resignation of Richard Nixon, pardoned Richard Nixon. And he said, our national nightmare is over, and I'm pardoning the president. We're going to release him from any of the criminal, punitive things that could happen to him as a result of what he did. And Teddy Kennedy railed on Jerry Ford, and there was an outcry, and Ford lost popularity. Well, in 2009, when the brain cancer was ravaging Senator Kennedy, he was writing a memoir. It was his last piece of writing. Obviously, he had a co-writer, but he said something that I think is very instructive. He said he got that wrong in 1974. There he is, upon reflection, 35 years later, he's on his deathbed. Jerry Ford made the right decision, because what Jerry Ford was saying, one man or one situation, we don't want it to cripple or overly politicize our judicial and legal system. And even though he wanted Richard Nixon punished, the fact that Jerry Ford made the decision not to punish him actually allowed the country to move on. And so I think there's a lot of precedent for that. So I hate the son of a bitch. I think he's a very bad guy. He's done very bad things to a lot of people. On your show and other shows, I have apologized for my role with him. I should have seen the pain that he was going to cause. There were many tells. I chose to overlook them alongside of many of my Republican friends. And should I have done that? No, I didn't. I apologize for that. But I did try to make good on, once I recognized how dangerous he was, I tried to make good on, going after him and trying to defeat him.
Okay.
And here we are now, but here's the message I think is important for somebody like me. We got to move past it. And so if you said to me, Trump's going to jail, that's going to give great satisfaction to Trump haters. But Trump doesn't go to jail. And 5 years later, Brad, the country is better for it, and it's more healed, and we're more together as a country, more unified. I would choose that. As much as I hate the son. You know what Italian Alzheimer's is?
I know. You forget the names, but not the grudges.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, and so I want the son of a bitch to go to jail.
Right.
Me personally,
he deserves to go to jail, though, Anthony.
I think he does. I think he does. I mean, I know a lot about
the
his
insurrection was him, baby.
I think he does, and I know a lot about his crimes. But again, what I'm saying is, if it was in the greater good of the nation that he not go to jail, I would be willing to accept that. And so I guess where I'm going is I want the country to heal. And you grew up in a country, and the military is responsible for this in the most positive way. We grew up in a country that was fairly unified and had a lot of civic virtue because lots of our families touched the military. Your family, you personally, my uncles, my dad. My uncles were in World War II. My dad was in the Korean War. And what happened was these people came home, and even though one was from North Dakota, one was from Indiana, one was from Long Island, they had this shared wartime experience, this shared patriotism, and this shared civic virtue. We only have 3% of the country being touched by the military now because it's an all-volunteer army. And a lot of that glue that was put in place after the Second World War isn't there. And that's why I think we have this increased factionalism, this increased tribalism. It would be a bold thing to do and perhaps unpopular, but if we had a compulsory service like they do in Israel.
I think there should be 2 years. They do it in Italy. When I was stationed in Italy, and I don't know if they still do it, I was in Sicily. Right. It's 2 years.
They do it in Israel.
Yeah.
They do it in Israel. Yeah. They do it in Italy.
Yeah.
So I think if we did this, and again, let's say you're a pacifist, so then you go work in the national park system or something like that, all of a sudden you're gluing back the country. The country is reminded of its strength together. There's other lessons. There's lessons from business. There's lessons from empires. We are so much stronger together. Those are the lessons. Once we separate, once we get our egos in place and we start hitting and bashing each other, we're going to lose out. I find, and I tell my kids this, you want to be a collaborator with your peer group, not a competitor. And so if your peer group is doing well, celebrate their success. Help them. In exchange, you will get a few of them to help you. Now, the cynics will say, well, you'll get stepped on a lot. So what? So what? You'll live a richer, better, happier life if you've opened the tent and you've embraced that sort of side of humanity. And I think we need to do that, you know. And Trump exposed the ugly tribalism of where we are right now. And so, come on, let's try to fix it. As opposed to anything else, let's try to fix it.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes. President Biden's first 100 days, how would you give it? Grade A to F, what would you give him?
Well, he gets a B plus A minus from me. I mean, nobody's perfect. You can't give him a straight A because of what's going on at the border. You can't give him a straight A because we're in a deficit crisis. It's not his doing, but he doesn't have a great solution to get us out of the deficit crisis. You know, you've got the wars, which I think are problematic. Us leaving Afghanistan, I don't know. I don't know if it makes it better or worse. We could debate it. And we could debate whether or not we needed to be there as long as we did. And I get all that. I've been to Afghanistan on troop support missions. And so I don't understand the complexity of Afghanistan. I'm not suggesting that, but I do know this. It is very complex. So anybody that's talking about it with these great certainties or certitudes, I think, wow, man, you're pretty confident given how complex those situations are. So for Joe Biden, I'm giving him a B plus, A minus. I think the vaccinations, you had 400,000 people vaccinated when he started. It's 100 days later, as you pointed out. There's over 230 million people vaccinated. That is a heroic home run thing. Even Dan Crenshaw said, if he can get to 100 million vaccine in 100 days, I'm going to praise him. He got to over 200 million.
Right.
So you know, I'm a big fan of what they're doing. There's a stable, safe pair of hands at the till. They got to resolve the situation on the border, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they have to. You can't. And by the way, fairness to Joe Biden, that was going on in the Obama administration. It was going on in the Trump administration. It's going on in his administration. So it's not like.
Well, did you see former President Bush on with Coda the other day?
Yes.
He was talking about his paintings, and where he was saying about more judges, so the process for when people come across the border. Did you agree with what he was saying on his take about the border?
I did, but here's the problem, okay? And this is the problem, and I want your listeners to really hear me out. If you've read the Presidential Daily Brief, or you've been briefed by John Kelly from the Department of Homeland Security, the cabinet secretary, on the complexity of the problem, you're like, holy shit, this is why the presidency is so hard, because when it gets to the man's desk, or eventually it'll be a woman, when it gets to the man or woman's desk, it's because no one else in the government, Brad, could make the decision. So I hear what President Bush is saying. I thought the interview was great. I thought it was very measured, what he was saying. But he also knows that what he's saying is not 100% true, because you can't solve for this refugee crisis the way President Bush was suggesting. Why? Because they're going to come. They're coming. You know, and why are they coming? Because just imagine you're a dad or a mom and you're moving a young kid 900 miles by foot to the American border. So just imagine the economic pain, the despair that you're feeling for your family to be willing to do that. Okay. And then when they get to the border, he knows this, President Bush, he knows the laws are such that if the child and the parent or whoever the child's with, because sometimes that happens, they pair the child to help try to get the adult into the border. If there's criminality or there's a record, if there's a record in Guatemala, a record in Mexico, the parent or the custodian is being held. And the child, for whatever reason, our laws are such that a child can't be held alongside of them. So they get separated. Now you want to change the laws. Okay, let's change the laws. Good luck with that Congress. Nobody in that Congress since the Vietnam War really wants to make a hard decision. They just want to be able to point the finger at people, you know? So there are very hard decisions. And, you know, and by the way, the group of 8, which included Marco Rubio before Trump got involved, they were about to do a compromising deal on immigration. Would it have been perfect? No, but it would have improved the situation. So to me, it's like this. Here's the truth. Do you want to live with the truth or not? I don't want to live with the truth. Okay. What is the truth? We're borrowing 47 cents for every dollar that we're spending. That is the truth. Okay, what do you want to do? Well, we could raise taxes so that we can make it more fiscally prudent. Nobody wants to pay the additional taxes. But everybody wants the money going out to PPP. Everybody wants the money to go out to help people that have been affected by the pandemic. Okay, where do you want to get the money from? Okay, well, we're going to print the money. Okay, well, if you're going to print the money, let me tell your viewers and listeners something. You just got taxed. That is a silent taxation, because if I'm printing $2 trillion and I put $2 trillion more dollars in circulation, Brad, the dollars that are in your bank account are worth less.
Yeah.
Okay, if I've got 40% more dollar volume in supply as a result of the pandemic, and that's what it will be after the $2.9 trillion stimulus is fully deployed, well, or the $1.9 trillion stimulus, well, guess what? What's ever in my bank account is worth less. Look at what's happening in trading cards. Look at what happened to Bitcoin. Look at what happened to real estate in really nice areas of the country. Look at what happened to collectibles, the art world. It went up in a skyrocket because of all of the money printing. So you've been taxed. Your purchasing power has gone down. So you're getting taxed anyway. Which politician that you know is at the podium explaining that to the American people?
They're not. None of, and that's Democrat and Republican.
Yeah, of course. No, it's both. So,
Yeah.
so this is not a left or right thing. This is about what's right or wrong for the country. So to me, tell the truth. Okay, look, guys, you don't want to pay for it and you don't want to get taxed. And I got that. So we're going to print the money, but then you're getting taxed. And oh, by the way, in certain states like New York City, you're going to get wildly taxed, but we're not going to give you any services. You're going to step over heroin needles and human defecation, and we're going to have homeless tents and shelters everywhere. And we've now got on 9th Avenue, we've got shootings. You know, people are shooting each other with guns on 9th Avenue from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And so they blighted all of those great little sports bars and restaurants on 9th Avenue. They're all closed. No one wants to put the restaurant over there anymore because of the crime. So, you know, you want to put homeless shelters in Times Square because you think that's the right thing to do. Okay, that's fine. But now that's the heartbeat of that city. So now all of that suburban traffic from New Jersey, Long Island, and Connecticut, they're not coming. They're going to miss out on those Broadway plays, all those restaurants, all those hotels. And I would tell you that that's the heart of the city. And Giuliani, you could hate him now because he's a little...
No, but that bastard, in fairness to him, and I've said this before, I lived there then. Right. He did a lot of good for New York. I know a lot of people probably hate me for saying this.
No,
but it's like he forgot where the hell he came from.
But so did Bloomberg. And what Giuliani would say to you, clean up the heart of the city, and then the concentric circles around the heart will improve. And that's what he did with Times Square. But,
and Giuliani, Anthony, you saw in the news today, right? You're probably looking at it.
I feel sad about it because I had a close relationship with him. He was one of the first. Mind. I feel sad about it. To me, I think the Rudy story is a very sad story. He destroyed his legacy. He will tell people, I don't care about my legacy. I'll be dead. He wanted to be in the bubble. He wanted to be with Donald Trump on Air Force One or on the helicopter. And result of which he lost some levels of his personal discipline. And I think it's a tale about ego, controlling your ego. You know, you got to know that you got to put your ego in the right place. You know, I failed at that. I have to confess that. I had in my narrative, I'm a blue collar kid. I went to Harvard. I built a successful business. I'm going to go work for the American president. Oh, wait a minute. The American president's a sociopath. Okay, well, let me choose to overlook that so I can fit into my personal narrative that I had that life experience. That's an ego-centric.
But but the difference is you admit that because you're a decent person. He would never admit it.
No. He will never. I agree with
But Anthony, when we first met in the first show I had you on, you told me, "Hey, Brad, you know what? No one's ever asked me tougher questions. Come at me straight like you did, straight at it." And you stood up and you answered them all.
I'm usually impressed with you. You did a lot of homework. And you asked me very, very tough questions. No bullshit, direct questions. And you forced a lot of intellectual and moral thinking, and I hope I tried to answer them as honestly.
No, you did. I'm
as
giving
I
you a
possibly
compliment. I'm giving you a compliment. What I'm saying is, even when I interviewed you the first time, I told you I had seen you when you still were singing his praises after you left the office, but you were always fair. When you went on Bill Maher or something, if you disagreed with something, you said it, even when you were a supporter.
Yeah.
Giuliani has never gotten there. He's still perpetuating that the election was fraudulent and that bullshit. So he's another one.
Joe Biden's laptop and all this nonsense. But yeah, look, I mean, look, here's the thing, you know, they have figured out that high level of disinformation is working for them. And when Trump said that I can shoot people on Fifth Avenue.
It was true. It was true.
Yes, because what he's figured out, he's the last white man standing. He is the finger in the dike, and no pun intended, but he's the finger in the dike in the sense that those people think that there's hordes of black transvestites that are coming over the transom that are going to take over their government. And Donald Trump is the last white man standing to prevent that.
Yeah,
so
right.
He can say and or do anything. You know, all of that narrative is false. It's a fear-based narrative. It's a nativist narrative. We have to break it down. We have to tell people, hey, you're wrong.
Right.
You know, I was in LA. One of the smartest people I know is will.i.am. He's an African-American man,
Black Eyed Peas.
lead singer, Black Eyed Peas, grew up in the inner cities. Mom raised him. I've never seen a better use of the left and right side of the brain than will.i.am. Should we judge him by his skin color?
No.
Brett, you and I are not going to do that. I think the guy's a genius. I'm trying to learn from him. I mean, if there's some things I can share with him that he could learn from, that would be great. But I look at him as a genius. And my point is, do you want to deny the genius of will.i.am because of his skin color? Do you not want to have that greatness represented in our society and the value that he's adding in terms of the businesses he's growing, the things that he's doing for people? We're going to exclude that? I mean, that is such a parochial, prehistoric way of thinking. And the only thing we can do is get influential people, people that young people think are cool, and beat it into the young people. And say, hey, man, come on. You know, you didn't choose your skin color, Brad. Your significant other didn't choose her skin color. I didn't choose my skin color. Come on.
Right.
So all of a sudden, our whole life is going to be based on our skin color? Come on. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not right. Let's knock it off. Let's talk honestly to each other and knock that off.
In closing, forget all the talking points that we just talked about. What message you want to send out to the world?
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's your message. I think it's your message. You know, I follow you. I listen to a lot of your interviews. I think it's your message. I think this is my message to people is let's focus on what is good. We don't have to always harbor on the bad things that are going on in our society. Let's try to make the bad things better. Let's meet in the middle. Let's focus on what's right or wrong as opposed to left or right or too overly ideological or tribal. And, you know, we can make the country better. And here's the message, my last message, because I'm back in my business, working full-time on my business. And I'm so excited about the abundant technology and the opportunity, whether it's AI, self-driving cars, drones that you and I are going to be able to fly and land on rooftops, all of the different things, biotech, the advancements of mRNA vaccines that will likely be a blunt force instrument against other pandemics. There are so many great things that are going on. Let's figure out a way to make the society more just and fairer so that we can share those things. And that this abundance, this age of abundance that we're about to enter, let's not make it so one-sided. Let's make it deep and wide in our society so that people are happier. I would rather have my neighbor happy, Brad, than live in a barbed wire security, in my McMansion, in my barbed wire security compound, while my fellow neighbors are suffering.
Right.
And I know you're like that too. And so let's figure it out. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, Anthony, I didn't say congratulations. I told you privately, but congratulations on the CNBC gig.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me so far.
I bet you're enjoying that. And I have to have you on one day and just let you talk because I don't know much about it other than people want me to invest in Bitcoin, but that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's probably a whole show.
That's a whole
probably
show.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
spent
have
a
you
lot
back.
of time on that as well. But
I
thank you for
appreciate-
the opportunity again, my brother.
Absolutely.
It's great to be on with you always.
All right. I appreciate
I
you.
wish you
Anthony.
great success with everything you're doing.
All right. Take care, brother.
God bless, man.
Bye. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show in the can with my paisan, Anthony Scaramucci. As I said, third time he's been on this show. Always a pleasure talking to this guy. I mean, he is, like I said, one of the most diverse, intelligent people I have ever met. He knows a lot about a lot of different things, which proves my point. I raised my son. I always tell him, know a little bit about a lot of different things because it makes you in the conversation with just about everybody. Forget about it. Remember, folks, hit that button whatever corner it's in and subscribe. Leave your comments below. Let's have a conversation. I always personally respond. Unless they're fugazis, forget about it. Then I'm not responding to you. And most times, if you're really stupid, I'm going to just block you from my channel. But we can have a conversation. You don't always have to agree with my viewpoint. But let's show respect. To get respect, you must show respect. All right? And again, follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, that's at BadBradRSR. That's another show in the can. As I said, forget about it. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Bad Brad out.